Good afternoon and welcome to Dorset Council's Licensing Subcommittee. Before we go on to the agenda, I will just get some introductions done. My name is Councillor Emma Parker. I represent Puddletown and Lower Winterbourne wards, and I'm also chairman of the Licensing Committee. If I can get my fellow councillors to introduce themselves, please.
I'm Councillor Brian Heatley from Rodwell and Wyke ward in Weymouth.
And I'm Councillor Mike Barron. I'm the ward member for Corfe Mullen.
And then Democratic Services.
Afternoon, I'm Elaine Tibble from Democratic Services.
And our legal team.
I'm Laura Orchie from Legal Services.
And my name's Hannah Massey, and I'm here shadowing Lara today.
And our licensing officer and report author.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Aileen Powell. I'm the licensing team leader. I also have some officers observing at the back of the room too.
Thank you. And then I will go on to the applicant. If you'd like to introduce yourselves, please.
Yes, my name is Parviz Panjalizadeh Marse, and I'm the business owner.
And I'm Philippa Holt. I'm part of the new management team at Sheep Warren Club, and I'll be speaking on behalf of Parvis today.
And then if we move on to the local authorities, we've got two representatives from the police. If you could introduce yourselves, please.
Thank you. I'm Kirsty Gatehouse, Licensing Officer covering Weymouth and Portland for Dorset Police.
Louise Busfield, Licensing Officer, Dorset Police.
Thank you. I believe that's everybody. Thanks. Okay, can I have an election of the chairman, please, for this hearing this afternoon?
Can I nominate Councillor Parker for the chair, please?
And I'd like to second that.
Thank you, councillors. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Sarah Williams and Paul Harrison, and Councillor Barron and Councillor Heatley are substituting for them.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any declarations of interest?
No.
No, none whatsoever.
Do we have any urgent items? Okay, thank you. Okay, I will now move on to Aileen, the report author, and this is to consider a temporary events notice for Chic Bar and Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, this is a hearing for a temporary event notice. The premises used to be known as Actors, and just as a bit of background, the licence for the venue was revoked after a summary review in January this year. That decision was then appealed to the magistrates and was heard in June of this year. The appeal was settled by way of a consent order after the licence holder offered to reduce the operating hours, and the council agreed, providing that this was supported by some robust conditions. The conditions that are now attached to the licence were agreed by both parties in court. The premises reopened on the 28th of July, having put all the requirements to meet the conditions into place. This temporary event notice is for the evening of the 29th of October into the early hours of the 30th, and in effect would extend the licensable hours until 4 a.m. There have been 2 objection notices served. The objection notice from the Environmental Protection Team just asks for the noise conditions from the licence to be added to any temporary event notice should it be allowed. The objection notice from the police is attached in full at Appendix 2, and they are here to support that. They object to the temporary event notice in its entirety, on the basis that it would be counter to the outcome of the appeal that happened in June, and it would undermine the prevention of crime disorder objective. The licence holder has sent a document in this morning which has been forwarded to all the members of the committee, and I believe has been read by all the members of the committee. One effect of a temporary event notice is that none of the conditions that are attached to the licence would automatically apply to a temporary event notice unless the subcommittee make a decision that they will attach some or all of the conditions to the temporary event notice, if they grant it. The guidance states at paragraph 7.39 that the decision to impose one or more of the conditions is for the licensing authority alone, and I quote, regardless of the views or willingness of the notice giver to accept the conditions. I would remind you that there can be no modification of a temporary event notice at this point in time. The decisions that are available to you are to issue a counter notice, which would not allow the event to go ahead, and therefore they would have to have the event under their current licence, to allow the 10 and add no conditions from the licence, or to allow the 10 with some or all of the conditions from the licence. And I would also further remind you that the licensing objectives are about the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance. And the prevention is probably the important word here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions for Aileen with regards to the report?
No, I've no questions.
I'll go to the applicant. Do you have any questions for Aileen with regards to the report? Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I will now move on to the applicants. If you would like to just give us a bit of detail around the need for this TENS.
We are applying for the temporary event notice for the 29th of October for the celebratory event of Halloween. We're asking for the extension for 2 further hours of our licensable activity. So are you okay with me at this stage to go through the objections, or does that come at a later stage? I've just got a couple of things to say on the objections.
If that's all that you've got to add, I'm happy for you to do that now. Obviously, what will happen is we'll ask you questions with regards to what you said. Obviously, the police will have the opportunity to ask questions and say, well, Aileen, and that will work the flip side as well. Okay.
Well, I will try to be as succinct as possible with regards to the first objection from the environmental health. As Aileen did mention, it's just to say that those conditions would be added to the temporary event notice. Prior to us reopening on the 28th of July, we did have an environmental health inspection that confirmed that all of the conditions that they are objecting on have been met. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to open initially. The next objection is to the application. For the objection for the application is Kirsty Gatehouse, which is the licensing officer at Dorset Police. So as Eileen's pointed out, she's objected on the licensing objectives of the prevention of crime and disorder and public safety. Secondly, the objection raised is on the basis that this would act against the agreed position at court, which enabled the premises to remain open following the summary review hearing and subsequent appeal. So this latter part of the objection is the first that we would like to address. The agreed position on court on the 6th of June 2022, from our understanding, gave no indication that a 10 application must not be granted. The outcome of the appeal being that an adapted premise licence for 3 to 5 Maiden Street was to be put through, and all of the conditions on the adapted licence had been met, and we have worked alongside Dorset Police, who, in Kirsty's own words, has supported the premises in towards working towards a high standard. This high standards of policies and stringent practice has been implemented across the board, and we also agree with Kirsty that the premises now operates robustly and in compliance with the conditions attached to the premise licence. So, as a start, we're hugely grateful to have had the opportunity to work alongside Dorset Police, who have given us sound advice and checked our practices at the venue to ensure that we are legally complying with licensing law. It has been a beneficial working relationship, which is evidenced by the zero crime data associated with the venue since rebranding and reopening on 28th of July. So the former objection to the prevention of crime and disorder and public safety, we'd like to address in a similar vein to the previous. Since reopening on the 28th of July, we've had zero crime data for the venue. Our stringent no ID, no entry, alongside a full refurbishment, has eradicated a previous culture within the venue. We sit here today as Sheep Bar and Club. We are not actors. We don't have a a drug problem. We have successfully eradicated an unsavoury culture there. Our stringent policy and presence is an excellent deterrent for patrons involved with the recreational or supply of drugs in the venue. You know, we're certainly not naive enough to think that just because the venue has been rebranded, that there's no drugs within Weymouth Town or, crime and disorder. Likewise, to think that just because Actors close, that the drug culture or the, crime and disorder has diminished in the town. From our position, on the contrary, the issue is still there, but it's been distributed across different venues in the town, and this is evidenced by patron bans for drug use at Pub Watch. Now, in relation to the objection of our 10 application on the grounds of prevention of crime and disorder from the Dorset Police, we do contest this highly, and we would actually argue that we're not bringing people into the town by operating a temporary event. We're merely operating at the same level as our competitors and taking some of that distribution of patrons back into our venue. Furthermore, we want to highlight that the venue is the only venue in Weymouth who operates on a no ID, no entry policy, as well as an ID scanner being used for every patron that enters the building. And also our door staff have a rigid search policy. So all of these are excellent deterrents for the wrong type of clientele entering the venue, and a decreasing late night alcohol related antisocial behaviour and crime and disorder. So we are also the only venue that has, of their own will, instructed an independent review of the venue. As per Shield Associate reports, we have clear evidence that Clear and Chic Bar and Club is upholding all of the 4 licensing objectives and the condition of its premise licence. So we have evidence by an independent review and by zero crime data that the venue no longer operates under the same practice as Actors Bar and Club. Yet it is evident from the objections that we are still being treated as actors, despite this contradicting evidence. Now, the hearing at Weymouth Magistrates, we lost the 24-hour licence, and we have risen to the conditions placed within the venue and evidenced these, but still feel that Chic Bar and Club is still being penalised for the remedied events of the past. Just a final point I'd just like to raise is the future of Chic Bar and Club and why we have applied for a 10. The decision to run a temporary event is operationally strategic. There's also a financial drive for this, but as Dorset Police cannot consider this as it's deemed a fiscal matter, we do wish to provide a brief summary of the operational strategy. So, Chic Bar and Club, or 3 to 5 Maiden Street, has historically been a late-night venue since opening in the 1960s. The proposed rebrand to Chic Bar and Club will take time to establish itself as 2 separate venues, 2 separate entities, the bar and the club, and time is needed to establish Chic Bar and Club as a live music venue. So the current conditions is last entry at 1:30 a.m., which means we turn away a large proportion of the crowd within town. By an extension of 2 hours, we are able to evidence to the later starters in patrons that are in the town that this is a new and fresh venture, and it's a safe venture, and it is worth that earlier visit to town. So while it is a priority for Chic Bar and Club to evidence to licensing authorities that we are a safe and compliant venue, there is also the business priority, which is convincing patrons that this is a safe and enjoyable venue. As we all know, it's a vital time for the hospitality industry. It has been one of the worst affected industries during the pandemic, and still it's a challenging time for all venues in Weymouth just because of the cost of living dramatic increases. People are needing to be more mindful of finances, and going out will undoubtedly be becoming less of a priority. Now, by approving our 10 application, you would be allowing us to operate under the same opening hours on a celebratory evening, which is Halloween, which is the same as our competitors. Now, in a diminishing industry where we already have a clear disadvantage as our competitors, it is vital to the sustainability of the business where there is some form of capacity to trade at the same level as our competitors. And finally, our long-term objective after having our licence changed is that long term we would like to apply for a variation of licence. And, you know, we don't sit here today with the temerity to apply for a major variation now, you know, after 6 months of being closed down. We are only applying for a one-night temporary event notice that, you know, extends our licensable activity for a further 2 hours. And ahead of our application, we did propose our intention to work alongside licensing, as we have done with Dorset Police, and evidence to you in advance of, you know, any major or minor vari applications, that by putting in a temporary event notice, that we can evidence to you that we are able to run a safe and compliant venue, you know, with our new practice that is in place. I mean, to be met, I understand that it's procedure, but to be met with objections at every stage of trying to build a sustainable business does feel somewhat discriminatory. And I don't mean that from yourselves. I mean that across the board. You know, there's still be a bad press being written about us, about previous you know, culture within the venue. We hear people walk past the venue on a daily saying that they won't come in because of the previous reputation. So what we need to do is we need to prove to our patrons, as we do need to prove to you, that we are able to, you know, provide a safe venue. We have got a completely different management team, and, you know, we place high regard on proactive and preventative practice. So, you know, unfortunately, without those kind of steps for a long-term plan, you know, we're not able to operate at our competitors' level. Then, you know, unfortunately, 3 to 5 Maiden Street will sadly just become another empty building within Weymouth's nighttime economy. So there's our reasons. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for that addition. That was really useful. Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Not at this moment, no. Thank you.
You say you reopened on the 28th of July. It's not a very long time ago. How many nights have you actually operated since then? Roughly.
5 nights. 5 nights per week is 5 nights per week. Yeah.
So 5 nights, 15 weeks, roughly. So we're talking about 70 nights or so of experience. Thank you. You said that during the court proceedings there was no indication that you wouldn't get a 10. A temporary event notice. Was there any indication that you would? After all, one of the main points was to reduce your hours.
Absolutely. I mean, there was no mention whatsoever of a 10 application within the court, you know.
With regards to the 10, I am going to bring our licensing officer in on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. When we were in court with the appeal, we were merely and only dealing with the premises licence. There is no way, when you are dealing with a premises licence, that you can make any promises or make any indications about what would happen with a temporary event notice, because it's a different part of the legislation. So that wouldn't have been possible, I'm afraid, at that point to discuss it.
Thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Heat, do you have any further questions?
Well, you've emphasised greatly the change in kind of the overall offer and culture of this venue. Is there a change in your clientele?
There is a clear change in our clientele. Our music, first of all, our settings, the environment is updated and as a higher end appeal to clients, to patrons. We have a cocktail menu. Our music is directed at an older age group, and certainly the people that we see coming through the door, which we can evidence through an ID scanner, they are of an older age bracket, which is, you know, they're the earlier crowds. The sort of situation within Weymouth Town is that it is a late starter for the younger crowds, and the older crowds come in earlier. So this 10 application is to kind of expand that clientele.
Is that everything?
That's it.
Do you have any
No,
questions?
nothing else.
Okay, over since you've rebranded and relaunched, have you had any issues at all with any of your clientele that you've got coming in?
There have been, the normal situation that happens within a door, but it's been defused and dealt with accordingly. We haven't had any crime data associated with the venue since reopening.
And when you state it's a bar club, is that in separate entities in the building? Is it a mix?
Patrons are able to go between the two, but they are two separate entities. There's two separate entrances. So you've got the downstairs entrance, which comes into the bar, and then you've got the upstairs entrance, which walks into the club.
Thank you. And on this particular evening that you've asked for the 2-hour extension, with regards to that, what sort of event are you going to have? Is it generally just the same as what you normally do, but you just want the extra 2 hours?
Yeah, downstairs will remain much the same, in that we won't change anything, down there, and it will just be a local DJ that we'll be playing for that extended amount of time upstairs.
And that's sort of like a normal sort of weekend evening, yeah. Just going back to the temporary events notice, obviously on the paperwork that you filled out, it does state that you want it from 2100 hours. Obviously, you've clearly got a licence until 2 a.m, so why have you wanted the extra from 9 and not from 2?
So our current conditions of opening hours within the licence are 11 a.m. until 2 a.m. the next day. So we don't actually open until 9 o'clock. So we just put it from 9 o'clock the previous evening up until 2 in the morning.
Okay. And with regards to, obviously, on your current licence, as you say, obviously there are conditions on there, and obviously one of the conditions are with regards to re-entry and a late entry. If you were successful in having the 10s, what would your, what would you be doing then? Would you still be letting people in till sort of like up to 3:30? So
our last licensable activity would be at 4 a.m. So as we are at the moment, our last final licensing activity is at 2 o'clock. So the last entry is 1:30. So we would propose that we would have a last entry at 3:30 for all licensable activity to stop at 4 a.m.
And what about re-entry?
Yes, so there'd be no re-entry after 3:30.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any further questions? No? Do you have... Yeah.
So this thing about re-entry, if someone goes out for a cigarette smoke, I think I read they're not allowed to come in again. What time would that be?
So that would be 3:30, as in line, absolutely. Same as at the moment, it's 1:30 if anyone goes out for a cigarette after that. But the positive that we have within the venue is that upstairs, in the upstairs part of the venue, there is the outdoor smoking area, so they wouldn't be leaving the venue.
Anything else? No, I've got no further questions at the moment, thank you. I will go to our licensing officer and ask if she has any questions for you.
Thank you, Chair. Just one. You made a statement that you'd been met with objections to every application and that was discriminatory. I'm not aware of any other applications. Have you made any?
No, sorry. Sorry, I wasn't meaning any other applications. I was just meaning at the first stage of a, our operational strategy moving forward for our long-term, this first stage we have been met with that objection. And I do use the word lightly discrimination. I'm not by any means sitting here making assumptions that we are being discriminated against you. I'm just saying that across the board, it is a very difficult situation to shake off a culture which we have already eradicated, because people that previously came to the venue, you know, if they were left with the assumption that it wasn't a safe venue as well, whereas so now they're not coming in. So if they were to come in, they would see that we were running, you know, a safe and compliant venue. So I don't know if that's answered your question, Eileen. It's a bit round about the houses there, wasn't it?
Anything further? No. Okay, thank you. So we had two representations from the responsible authority. Obviously, we don't have environmental protection here, so we've noted their comments that they've made, because that's all we can do at this stage, because they're not here for us to question it. So it will be, obviously, we'll take into account what they've written in their representation. Okay. I will now move on to the police. Do you have any questions for the applicant at this stage?
Not at this stage, no, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will now move on to the police. We've got Kirsty Gatehouse and Louise Busfield. If you would like to elaborate, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I've made some notes, but I don't propose to sit here and reiterate everything that's already been said. So in summary, obviously, the Sheep Bar and Club was formerly known as Actors, and it was whilst it was Actors that we, as the police, instigated the summary review based on the concerning evidence that we'd obtained specifically around drug use and dealing at the premises. So that was why that happened. And like you say, the initial decision was to revoke it, and then after the appeal, extensive conditions were applied to it, which cover things such as the door staff ratios, the re-entry limitations, search policies, ID checking, the staff training is much higher than it was, the CCTV coverage, and obviously the opening times. So since those have been in place and the short time that the premises has been open, I know we say about the 70 nights, but it has still only been since the end of July. Although there's been no incidents of note, which is very much more reduced than how it was before. I think this is massively to do with the opening hours that we've had. A lot of the nighttime economy issues that we have in Weymouth are sort of in the later early hours, if that makes sense. So I think that the opening times have contributed to that. When my objection email was sent out, I included Mr. Marseille in the recipient list, and I had a reply from him that came direct saying that the objection to the 10 was disappointing but somewhat expected, and that he hoped there'd be more relaxing on this further down the line, which I thought meant the way that he'd said it, the fact that it was expected, almost sort of reinforces that they haven't been open for very long and there hasn't been that time to sort of prove that everything is going absolutely fine. It was towards the end of the summer. We're now into a period where there aren't the tourists that we had before, and Weymouth in general goes a lot quieter this time of year. I don't like saying the Q word, but hopefully it stays that way in terms of the disorder and things like this. So further to this application things, I'm in quite regular contact, like they say, with both of them, not just since they've reopened, but prior to reopening. We had several meetings where we were going through the conditions to make sure everything was compliant for when they'd open. And there were questions about some of the conditions on there and how it would work, but we were reassured that by the time they'd be open to the public, everything would be complied with. So I've also had correspondence at the end of each month asking for confirmation of any incidents that have been reported to us to sort of back this up. But it seems like that's the be-all and end-all of, if there's a crime there, we're going to look at it negatively. And I just want to sort of reiterate that that's not the case. We expect a certain level of disorder within the nighttime economy based on its nature. You've got alcohol, you've got drugs, which we do our best to keep away, but we know it's out there. And when these mix with people that have been drinking and taking whatever from the early hours till whenever, we expect the odd fight, assault, that kind of thing. We don't like it, but we know that it happens. So there's plenty of other venues in Weymouth where this happens, and we work with them. As long as the venue is proving that they can do everything they can to stop these things from escalating to the really serious incidents. We've not got problems with calls to places on a Friday and Saturday night sort of thing. If it's a repeated one, or it's the same sort of things coming up like we had at the end of last year with the drug use and the drug dealing things like that that are concerning, that's when we intervene in the way like we did. If it's an assault here, a fight here, that kind of thing, as long as it's not a regular occurrence all the time and it's through a failing on the premises part, then that's when, like I say, we'd be taking more action than just having the conversations like we've had so far. So prior to this temporary event notice being submitted, I did speak to Mr. Marseille on the phone, and he outlined the plans to say that he wanted to apply for this and for a couple of others over the next couple of months. And I said that it was just prior to me going on some annual leave, and I said that I would sort of take a look at it. I'd have a chat to some people within the team, sort of see how things are going, because I'm still relatively new to this role in terms of how we deal with things like this. And then I came back from my leave to find that the temporary event notice had already been submitted. And due to the timescales in which we have to deal with them, that's why I felt like we had to make the objection, so that I had more time to sort of consider things and put the point across, which is why the objection came in like it did, to explain it like that. So I can't think of anything else I need to say. Do you have anything to add, Louise?
Thank you. Just to add that I think in this situation, which is quite unique, having only reopened a couple of months ago, the end of July, we would expect to see a consistent period of operation. As my colleague Kirsty has said, the operation of the premises since the consent order hasn't been at a peak time. It's been at a quite low period of holidaymakers, customers, and I think we would expect a much more consistent, a much longer period of consistent operation with good discourse good dialogue between the licensing authority, the police, just to give us the reassurances that the operation is indeed robust. And I reiterate Kirsty's comment that it is quite disappointing that this has been submitted so soon without any proper conversation, which could possibly have mitigated the need for the subcommittee hearing. It's also well known that it's that last drink, it's the last entry at 3:30 with a close at 4 o'clock in the morning. Who's going to be coming into the premises at that time of night? It's not somebody who's just set foot outside their house and is stone cold sober. It's well known in the nighttime economy that it's the late night opening premises where we're going to attribute most alcohol-related crime, disorder and antisocial behaviour. And it has been proven statistically that by drawing back those hours, the premises has been able to operate a lot more robustly and thereby promoting the licensing objectives.
Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions?
Loads of buttons around here, I'm interested in the history of the premises, because on 2.1 it states the premises was formerly known as Actors, right, and had its licence revoked after a summary review that had been brought by the police in December 21. Why was it revoked?
Yeah, that's probably a better question for Aileen to answer.
Thank you, Chair. It was revoked because the evidence that the police presented of prolific drug dealing in the premises that was gathered by undercover officers over several weekends, and the previous history of incidents were enough to warrant the revocation of the licence, because there was no conditions that were being offered that were felt to be capable of being put on that would have sorted the situation out. So it was very much a last resort that the committee at that time decided to revoke the licence.
You've both told us a lot about greater crime and disorder later in the evening in the nighttime economy. I see that, but I mean, we have had evidence from the applicant that there are a large number of places in Weymouth staying open until 4 o'clock. I suppose I'm looking for a little more particularity about why you were so worried about this one.
So, like I say, it's not that we're specifically worried about this premise. The main reason for the objection, like I say, was the lack of time to sort of discuss my concerns beforehand. But in relation to the venues that are staying open until 4 o'clock, like I said, they are the venues where we are still getting those reports of incidents and bits and pieces. But part of what we have to consider is the resources that we have to deal with such incidents. And in Weymouth, we're not exactly flush with officers. It's the same across the whole county. So even though it's still within the town centre, if it's sort of more places that are open later and it's spreading out from the small location where the majority of the later night venues are, we just have to consider if there's going to be that additional impact on resources like we had before, I guess. Hopefully that answers.
Thank you, Chair. There are actually only 3 venues that open till 4 o'clock that I'm aware of: the Closet, the Tiki Bar and the Nook Cocktail Bar. Rendezvous, as I understand it, actually only open till 2 o'clock. We are in an area of cumulative impact policy down in Weymouth. So whilst that hasn't been mentioned, and it wouldn't normally be mentioned with a temporary event notice, you do have to, there is that in the mix as well. Thank you.
Yes, can I go back to another bit of your evidence about you had to put in the objection notice in a hurry because you were going on leave and so on and so forth. I'm wondering what we're supposed to draw from that. I mean, are you saying that you're not perhaps as serious about the objection as you were, or you are maintaining it, are you not?
It's not that I was doing it in a hurry. It's because, like I say, when I was contacted prior to going on my annual leave, I thought that there was going to be a discussion around the temporary event notice when I returned. I then come back to find that it's already there, so that consultation clearly couldn't take place. That's sort of what I meant by it. Sorry if I wasn't clear. It's not that I don't think it's a worthy objection. It's just, like Louisa said, we could have potentially avoided it coming to this stage. With a temporary event notice, it could have still been submitted next week, and it could have still been viable for the 29th of October. It wasn't as if we only had a few days to sort of have that discussion. So it sort of took me by surprise a little bit that the decision had been made to submit it so soon.
May I just also add to this that when we have engaged and worked so extensively with any specific premises, such as actors, as it was, we expect that dialogue. We have a greater confidence in our working relationship with the operator if they do have the courtesy to engage in that dialogue. And it is necessary from our perspective so that we can actually understand what they're trying to achieve and work with them to support and engage with our premises so that they can deliver what they want to deliver within the constraints of the Licensing Act and the licensing objectives. So again, it is disappointing that this was served without that dialogue. Kirsty's always available, and yes, it's something we would have expected.
Thank you. I'll come to you very shortly. Do you have any further questions? No. Since the premises is rebranded, obviously it does now have new management in, because I don't believe you were in management beforehand, were you? No, okay. Have you had any incidences come in where the premises is concerned?
There was one incident that I'm aware of where I asked them to check the CCTV to confirm if something had happened, and they were obliging with that. But I don't have exact data on me, unfortunately, to confirm if there's any more than that.
It was just, any concerns that you've had come in with, regards to the premises, whether you recall whether it was once, twice, the 70 times they've been, sort of trading. But, okay. Okay, thank you.
I reiterate, and I hope that the licensing subcommittee and your colleagues did pick up on this, that it's not a bad thing if premises contact the police. It again shows that open line of dialogue between licensing, Dorset Police licensing, and the premises operator. And it's not necessarily indicative of a perfectly well managed and operated premises if they don't contact the police, because as colleagues said, it is inevitable that there will be crime and disorder within the nighttime economy, and just as long as it's well managed by the premises, we have no fallout with it. So we would expect a level of calls from any licensed premises within the nighttime economy in Weymouth and the wider Dorset area.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions for you. Aileen, do you have any questions? No, okay. I am just going to go back to the applicant before they ask questions, because I just want to get this resolved, if I can, around the application of the temporary events notice. And when it was done, obviously, Kirsty stated that there was a dialogue, going on. She was going on leave. There could have been a conversation there. What's your take on that as to how and why it was applied for?
Well, I have been in contact with Kirsty on a regular basis, and I have been writing to her to send me any crime report. And I spoke to Kirsty about this 10 application, and she was going away, which I understand. But I have dealt with a lot of other planning application. Normally, planning application, you require 28 days. I've never done 10 applications, so I thought you needed 28 days. That's why we put the application in. Now, then I was talking, I think it was Catherine or somebody, they said, no, you only need 7 days, which if I'd known, I would have stopped. So that's one thing which I made it clear. That was the reason for it. I thought we needed longer time, like 28 days for a normal, any application. The other issue is the timing of it. On our application, it says close 4 o'clock. It doesn't mean, at the moment, we close 2:30. The last order is 2 o'clock, last entry is 1:30. And by the time people go out, it's 2:30, which we haven't come to that level yet, because normally by just before 2 everybody goes, because they go clubbing. They have to pay £5 to get into a club. They're not going to stay in my place until 2:30 and then go pay £5 for an hour and a half somewhere else. So I think our application probably wasn't, it was our own naivety that it wasn't filled in properly. So what I am proposing to say that the last entry will be 3 o'clock, the last serving of alcohol will be 3:30, and by 4 o'clock everybody goes out. We close at 4. That is what we meant on the application. So that's it. But there's a lot of things I want to say, but I'll let,
With regards to the temporary events notice, we can only take on board what is on that notice today. We can't curtail any of the times on it. Yeah, but then that's what we have to take into account. That's the timings that we have to take into account. With regards to the temporary events notice itself being submitted, when you were advised by the licensing team that obviously there were 7 days, did you not think about withdrawing this? No. Okay, thank you. I'm going to come to you two anyway. Have you got any questions? And I would say that they're questions, not statements, for the police at this stage. Okay. Well, I believe we've asked all questions that we need to ask, so I will. Oh, did you want to come? Of course, if you want. I'm going to give you a chance to sum up, so if it's more in a summing up stage, then obviously you're both welcome to sum up. It doesn't just need to be one of you. So if are you happy to come in on that stage?
when you said why I didn't withdraw. When the application was put in, within a day later, we had an objection from the environmental health, which I was very surprised. And then we had the objection from the police. So I thought that was the end of it. I was not expecting to come here today to, all of you made effort to, taking time to come to this. I thought that was it, dead, gone. That is why I didn't withdraw. If I had known, I would have done it.
Thank you. Yeah, so with a temporary events notice, the only people that can object to a temporary events notice are the authority. Obviously, members of the public can't, but the police can, and so can environmental protection. When they put in their objections, that doesn't mean to say that you can't withdraw your application. You are still within your rights to withdraw your application up until the day of the hearing. Is that correct? 24 hours. So you could withdraw within 24 hours of this hearing today, just so you know. I'm just going to go back to Aileen, if I can. Aileen, can I just clarify that there is guidance there, isn't there, when there is advice and guidance when the temporary events notice is? I get what we've got here is quite a lot of it, but just to clarify, the points that have been made are on there.
There's guidance on the end of the forms that is included on the online application form. There's also a lot of guidance on the website before you go into the application process. And there's also obviously the 18182 guidance. So yeah, loads of guidance.
Thank you. I know not a lot of us don't like reading small print, but sometimes it's quite important to read it. That's fine. Thank you very much. Okay, unless anybody else has got any further questions, I'm now going to move on to summing up. Okay, and I do the summing up in role reversal, so I am going to come back to the police. If you would like to sum up, again, if you've got nothing to add, that's absolutely fine.
No, I don't think we've got anything further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll now come to the applicant. Do you have anything to add to summing up? Again, this is your final chance to, give us all the information you need, because I want you to go away from here thinking that you've had a fair hearing. I don't want you going away thinking, well, I wish I'd said that. So, tell us what we need to know.
Okay, I've certainly covered a lot of ground in, a previous statement. We do just want at this stage just to say, despite that lack of communication there with regards to the 10 application, it is our priority to work with you as the Dorset Police, as we have previously evidenced, and also with the licensing authority to evidence that we can provide a safe venue. Now, one of the main components of us applying for a 10 application is that we are able to evidence to you, as the Dorset Police and the licensing authority, that we can run a safe and compliant venue until 4 o'clock. And at this stage, we would argue that although Kirsty is saying that the crime and disorder happens within that later part of the evening, we would say that as a venue, we are well equipped to actually deal with that through the amount of security that we've got and the stringent practices and policies that we've got for entry into the venues. So, that's all I wanted to say at this point. So thank you.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add to summing up?
No.
Thank you. I will now move on to Aileen for summing up, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that, yes, this licence is one of the most robust in town for very good reason. This is an area of cumulative impact. There are very few premises that go beyond 2 in the vicinity. There is quite a mix in Weymouth. Apart from that, your decision is, as I outlined earlier, either to allow the notice as it is, allow the notice with conditions, either all of them or some of them from the licence, or to issue a counter notice, which would not allow the temporary event notice, and would mean that they can still operate, they can still have their event, but it will be within the licensable hours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to draw this meeting to a close. Before I do, obviously, there is a right to appeal, and that right to appeal, you can do that as you've received the decision notice. I believe that's going to be coming out to you by email. So everybody that's made representation will get a copy of the decision notice once you've received that. You do have a right to appeal, which is within 21 days to Weymouth Magistrates Court. And I believe that, yeah, so that's coming out by email. That's all good. Lara, have we covered all legal aspects?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. So I will be taking a vote that we go into exempt business. So we will go into exempt business now to make our decision. Once our decision has been made, like I said, it will be come out to you via email. Within our exempt business, we do have a democratic service officer with us, and we do have our legal representative on hand should we need any legal advice from them. So, councillors, can I have a vote on going into exempt business, please?
Can I propose that?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you, and I declare this meeting closed, and I thank you all for attending. Thank you very much.